So let's get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome to yet another Sophos MDR ThreatCast. My name is Greg Idden. I'm the security strategist for Sophos MDR Service. Joining me today is a lovely cast as always. We've got Jordan Olness from Threat Intelligence, Morgan Dembosky, also from Threat Intelligence. We've got Mark Parsons from the Threat Hunt team, and we've also got Andrew Brandt from the Threat Research team in XOps. We're going to be covering a number of things today. As always, we're going to go through the threat landscape, what's been going on in sort of the wider world with Jordan. Then Morgan's going to take us through what we've been observing here in MDR. Then Mark's going to take us through some threat hunting highlights. And then Andrew's going to take us through the XOps review, some various different articles, and a little insight into some really funky tool that's been killing EDR products. No more spoilers than that. I'll take us through briefly, if we've got time, the MDR Most Unwanted image, which will be posted to the MDR community, and then we'll do Q&A at the end. But as always, just do remember, if you have a question, you can now see in our brand new fancy platform, you can see on the right, there is a Q&A section where you can fire in your question to us. We'll either answer that live as we go, we'll either answer on the back end via text, or we'll take it at the end of the session. This is being recorded. I will get this question, I'm sure. Yes, this is being recorded, and we'll be getting this shared. I think we'll possibly put a link on the community. I think it also might end up in your inbox. I'm not 100% certain. This is the first time using this platform, and I'm not fully au fait with everything that goes on behind the scenes, but we'll be sure that you'll get that link. Another thing to note is that thank you for joining us here on this wonderful new platform as a kind of special, being here for the first sort of session here in this platform. We're going to be doing a little prize raffle. So all attendees that have come here live, you're going to be automatically enrolled into the raffle. And the prizes that are going to be available, there's 3 $250 Amazon gift cards. There'll also be 15 Sophos swag bundles, which include a Sophos t-shirt and a Yeti. And so winners of this, you'll be notified directly within sort of the week, give us 7 days or so. And then if you won one of the swag bundles, we will be directly contacting you to let us know, your shirt size and, of course, the delivery address to send that to. All right. With that, let's pass over now to Jordan, and Jordan's going to take us through the landscape. Jordan.
Hi there. Welcome, everyone. Let's dive into the threat landscape. Okay, starting off in notable breach territory. The big one getting all the headlines this month, national public data. So back in December of last year, a malicious threat actor got access to National Public Data's internal database and records, and was able to exfiltrate about 2.9 billion records on people from the United States. There was actually some incorrect headlines describing that 2.9 billion Americans had their data exfiltrated. There aren't that many Americans, just 2.9 billion records. The information has been bouncing around different criminal forums for several months now, and just this past month was sold publicly, and now that data is starting to filter out into places that are outside of the criminal underground. So that's a lot of data on a lot of people. So a little bit of background on the data itself. This company, National Public Data, they are a aggregator of information on people. This is primarily for the purpose of performing background checks for companies to, get a background check done on somebody as they're hiring them. So this company collects information from all sorts of different, especially state level sources. So things like, business registration records or criminal history records, prison records, exactly what their business is about. A lot of duplication within the data set, a lot of different pieces of data that all over the place. So it's even hard to get a sense of how many people are affected, because there is kind of very desperate and separate data sources that this company was aggregating. Researchers have been able to get their hands on the data itself and started looking at this. So this is researchers such as Brian Krebs and Troy Hunt of Have I Been Pwned. They've had some interesting findings. I've thrown the links to kind of some of their findings towards the end of the slides here. You'll be able to download that later. The analysis that has happened so far is that a lot of the data is pretty old. A lot of I guess records for individuals that the birth date listed would show that they're very, very old. I think about 2 million records. The people would be at least 120. I think one of the researchers even said that there was no birth dates listed that were more recent than 2004. So something to be aware of. I know Brian Krebs even mentioned a lot of the data was incorrect. He looked himself up in the data, and it was quite incorrect. This data set has posed a little bit of a problem for researchers to, I guess, let people know that they're affected. Normally, I'd be pointing people over to a nice website called Have I Been Pwned, run by Troy Hunt. Unfortunately, not every record comes with an email address, which Have I Been Pwned, you punch in your email address. So it's made things a little bit difficult on that front. A company called Atlas Data Privacy has set up a separate website so that you can, under different circumstances, look up whether you are in the data set and have had your data affected in this breach. Screenshot of that is on the right there. So that link is also towards the end of the slides here. That will be made available to you after the broadcast. Okay, I think that's pretty much everything for this one. Let's move on to notable vulnerabilities. 2 Windows vulnerabilities actually this month that we're going to be looking at. First one, the one getting all the headlines, it's CVE 2024-38063. This is an integer underflow vulnerability in the IPv6 handler code, leading to, according to Microsoft, remote code execution. More on that later. What this means is that, according to Microsoft, an attacker could create a specially crafted packet or series of packets, send them at Windows machines that run IPv6, which is pretty much all of them, and according to them, receive remote code execution. That's a lot of attack surface. Every Windows machine basically on the planet. That's notable in and of itself. No proof of concept. Let's put an asterisk beside that for now. We'll come back to that, but no confirmed active exploitation. Researchers immediately, this is a very concerning attack surface. Researchers immediately dug into this one and started figuring out how this vulnerability works, started reverse engineering, and concerns got raised almost immediately that this doesn't seem like the kind of vulnerability that can lead to remote code execution. Everybody that's done their own analysis has been saying this looks much more like a denial of service vulnerability. That is where the proof of concept comes in. Just within, I think, the past 48 hours, some security researchers have produced proofs of concept that result in denial of service. The computer crashes, but certainly no remote code execution. So that's encouraging. There's also been other analyses that have said, hey, this exploit code or this vulnerable code is in, you've got to send a malformed packet or, a fragmented packet in order to exploit it. So a lot of researchers said, well, don't your routers usually drop malformed packets? This is kind of a standard feature for most routers. If it's not obvious, there's a lot that's still kind of moving with this one. This is still very much in motion, and not. I think this will take a little time for people to kind of wrap their heads around. Unfortunately, Microsoft is not saying more on the subject, and the individuals that they've credited as discovering it, I believe it's a company called Cyberkunlun, is also not talking either. So we're probably just going to have to wait and see what else shakes out of this. But with the research that's been done right now, it seems like Microsoft might have jumped the gun a little bit with their analysis or their classification. Okay, moving on. CVE 2024-38193. This is a privilege escalation stemming from use for free. This one was added. This was included in Patch Tuesday and immediately added to the Kev database, which is a bad sign that it's exploited as a 0-day, which is exactly what turned out to be the case. Company that discovered it, Gen Digital, released a statement saying that they discovered a North Korean threat actor that was using the exploit in the wild. This vulnerability exists in a legitimate driver in Windows, and this is kind of something we've been seeing on the ground in the wild for increasing more time now. The threat actors were using the vulnerable driver to disable EDR, which is something we call EDR killer. And this is something that we see in the wild quite a bit. And actually, you're going to see Andrew mention this and talk about this later on the broadcast about some of the work that Sophos is doing to combat this threat. Stay tuned for that later. Moving right along. Notable news, prolific credential seller sentenced. Announcement from the U.S. Attorney's Office of District of Columbia announced that they had sentenced Georgi, I'm not going to attempt that last name, to 40 months in prison for criminal activity related to the Slilp illegal marketplace. This was a place where people could, who have, compromised credentials, could sell them. And this Georgi is accused of attempting to sell over 600,000 credentials on that marketplace, successfully selling over 300,000 of them. According to the announcement, this resulted in $1.2 million of losses for victims, approximately. This marketplace was actually shut down in 2021, and this person was arrested and extradited later that year. I think the big takeaway for me on this one is that there had been this kind of mentality in cyber criminal spheres that the law enforcement people, they want to go after the ransomware people. That's really what they're more concerned with. So I'll just sell credentials instead. I'll just compromise the creds, sell them off, make a payday, and then move on. And I think that this sentencing proves that that's not the case. That law enforcement very much is interested in catching and prosecuting those individuals as well, because they play an important part of the cyber criminal economy. Moving right along, I think we've got the ransomware leak site analysis. We've got Link's blog and Kill Security, I think, are pretty much brand new, whereas I think Helldown has been around for a couple months. Interesting to see that they come out so strong right off the bat. Eldorado, Dragon Force, I don't think they had any leaks on their site at all this past month, whereas Handala had about 4, maybe. So significantly less activity for those groups. If you look at the frequency of the leak sites over the past month, you can tell that there's a very clear trend for Ransom Hub. Very, very strong month for that group. There is some debate right now whether that is a rebrand of previous threat actors and previous ransomware groups. I think there's going to be more debate about that going forward. And you can see that, frequency analysis of that. Ransom Hub was pretty active pretty much all the way through, whereas, a lot of the others had more activity towards the end of the month. So I think that's more or less it for me. Before we move on to observed threat activity, do you have any questions, Greg, or are we good to move on to Morgan?
I am not seeing any questions, so I think we'll just roll straight into observed threat activity. Thank you so much, Jordan. Appreciate it. Hello, friends. Okay, so starting off with a recap of the most active ransomware and malware families that we've observed within our MDR and incident response customer base over the last month. So starting with most active ransomware, the three most active were actually the same as last month. We have Akira, Ransom Hub, and Fog ransomware, and that was followed by Black Suit ransomware, which is reported to be a rebrand of Royal ransomware and the infamous Conti ransomware group. And lastly, number 5 was Chillin ransomware, which we actually recently released reporting on a few days ago on their new technique to steal credentials stored in Google Chrome browsers. So if you haven't seen that, highly recommend you check it out. Pivoting over to most active malware, the most active variant was the same as last month, and that was Bootloader. And Bootloader is typically distributed via SEO poisoning, search engine optimization poisoning, and abuses compromised websites to lure victims into downloading things like a zip archive posing as a document that the user has searched for. The second is Private Loader, which is similar to Bootloader, is often spread via SEO poisoning and functions to deploy a range of other stealers and loaders. The third is Darkgate, which beyond just having loader capabilities is also a fully featured remote access Trojan, and it is often seen making use of legitimate auto IT files and typically runs multiple auto IT scripts. The fourth we have here is Chrome Loader, which, as you could probably guess from the name, we often see distributed through Google advertisements, often around keywords like PDF converters. And the goal here is to really trick users into downloading a malicious MSI installer file. And then lastly, we have Luma Stealer, and this is a subscription-based malware as a service info stealer that's been observed in the wild since 2022. It's primarily known to target crypto wallets, browser extensions, and two-factor authentication, but ultimately the goal is to steal sensitive information from compromised machines. Going into a little bit more of specifics here. So Akira ransomware, we have seen several Akira ransomware cases in August, and for a while, Akira was noted to primarily target Cisco ASA and Fortinet devices, but recent intelligence reports Akira is actually now targeting SonicWall SSL VPNs. Now, we don't know for sure whether it's a vulnerability, whether they're brute forcing, or strictly abusing single-factor authentication, but we do know that multiple victims did not have multi-factor authentication enabled, so they really like to abuse accounts with single-factor authentication and those specifically with weak passwords. Akira is also commonly known to leverage a range of different dual-use tools like AnyDesk. The table you see here is a list of dual-use tools that we've seen used in multiple Akira ransomware cases in August. And you can see the graphics on the right side showcasing the Akira data leak site theme and their data leak site post trends over the last several months. And Mark here in a second is actually going to be talking about our observations of an authentication bypass vulnerability in VMware ESXi that has been abused by Akira and Black Suit ransomware actors. So stay posted on that. That'll be really interesting to hear about. But before we get to that, we're going to be talking about a couple malicious advertising campaigns that we've observed recently. So this first campaign is attributed to a known ransomware affiliate that we track as Stack5381. And so the threat actors use what's known as malicious advertising. So basically, they abuse a flaw in search engine ad features to make their fake page that's carrying a malicious installer to look like it's legitimate in the search results. So in this case, the malicious ad was impersonating the Google Authenticator app. So the user leveraged Microsoft Edge to search the Bing search engine for the string Google Authenticator, which popped up the malicious ad that you see here. And when the user clicked on it, it led them to a malicious typo squatted domain where they then downloaded a Trojanized Authenticator application, which allowed the threat actors to gain initial access to the organization's network. And though in this case, we observed Bing leveraged for the malicious advertisement, we also later uncovered Google ads being used during our proactive threat collection. So both Google and Bing are being abused in this campaign. But the Trojanized Authenticator application carried an initial malware that was pretty evasive and was actually undetected across all vendors on VirusTotal at the time of the campaign. And it was determined by our Sophos Labs team to be a malware called Warm Cookie, which sounds super fuzzy and nice, but is not. It's actually a backdoor capable of doing several different things like executing commands, reading and writing files, and taking screenshots. But in this case, it was seen leading to the deployment of commodity info stealers, specifically Radamanthus stealer, which we haven't noted on the slide here that there was attempted process dumping with Norton, and that is actually not the case. Open source intelligence actually indicates that the Radamanthus stealer was actually masquerading as an unsigned Norton AV dump, so that's something to note there. But we also saw the deployment of what we believe to be Darkgate malware. The sample that we observed was not on VirusTotal, but we observed it in the same file path as previous Darkgate samples, which leads us to believe that it is indeed that malware. In addition to that, we saw the threat actors perform internal discovery, use remote desktop protocol to move laterally, and deploy a common dual-use tool called OpenSSH to establish a reverse SSH tunnel to maintain RDP persistence. And the discovery activity from the threat actors was actually detected by MDR, leading to a quick response that prevented ultimately ransomware deployment. And as I mentioned, we attributed this activity to Stack 5381, which is also known as Velvet Tempest. And this is a prolific ransomware affiliate that has previously been seen deploying ransomware such as Lockbit, Black Cat, Conti, and many more. Recent threat intelligence indicates that Stack 5381 could now be working with and deploying Ransom Hub ransomware. But since we prevented this intrusion from leading to the ransomware stage, we're unable to determine what the final payload, what the intended final payload was. In terms of recommendation, we recommend to turn on application control for FTP client, which encompasses OpenSSH, which will really help in flagging and blocking activity involved with the OpenSSH tool and help in blocking campaigns such as this involving OpenSSH. The last thing we're going to be talking about here is a very similar malicious advertising campaign. It's an ongoing Google ad campaign impersonating various IT tools. So in this specific case that we observed, the user searched Google for Winderstat download and clicked on a Google ad that redirected them to a fake website impersonating the legitimate Winderstat software. So Winderstat stands for Windows Directory Statistics, and it's basically a disk usage analyzer and viewer. So the user, once they clicked on that, was then redirected to download the Trojanized Winderstat software, which was hosted on a compromised WordPress site. And upon execution, the malware injected Cobalt Strike into multiple system processes, including a legitimate Windows process service host that tried to execute a renamed version of Bloodhound, which was actually blocked by Sophos. And we worked closely with Sophos Labs to really improve Cobalt Strike detection coverage from both a static and behavioral standpoint following this case. And proactive threat intelligence does indicate that beyond Winderstat, that many other popular tools are being impersonated, including Space Sniffer, Furmark, Advanced IP Scanner, and Angry IP Scanner. So in terms of recommendations here, we really recommend that, if you have questions, if you're encountering questionable downloadable files, to submit those to Sophos Labs Intellex to screen for Trojanized applications and Trojanized files that could possibly lead to initial access. And I think that should bring us to an end for observed activity. So I'll throw it right over to Mark.
Thank you very much, Brian. Really appreciate it. Hey, folks, so we have some particularly impactful hunts to discuss, covering both ransomware operators as well as nation-state actors' post-compromise techniques. So buckle up. This section is going to have something for everybody. Moving into our very first threat hunt. Before we dive into this, I actually want to explain to you all, in case anyone's new here, kind of the format for this slide. So the top left side of the slide will identify the title of the threat hunt, with the bottom left identifying any additional aspects of the hunt, as well as potential operators or actors using the hunted technique. In this instance, we're hunting for the ESX admin group additions or changes. The reason why is because of the CVE 2024-37085. We identified Black Suit as well as Akira ransomware operators leveraging this vulnerability. Now, the right side is going to show how the MDR threat hunt team identifies new threat hunt ideas, discuss how we go about executing that hunt, and finally, what we found as a result of that hunt. So we're going to use a variety of different hunting frameworks and methodologies to identify and execute these hunt opportunities. We're typically going to start with a hunt hypothesis, or a statement saying what we believe evil or bad will look like. This is that blue box at the very top, which in this instance it comes from that CVE, which is an Active Directory integration authentication bypass vulnerability. Excuse me. This will allow threat actors to modify or create a group called ESXadmin. And once that threat actor has done this, they'll be able to grant administrative privilege to users within that group. After this, we want to indicate where this threat hunt idea came from. In this instance, the MDR incident responders identified a ransomware deployment that leveraged this attack. And then in addition to that, there was open source reporting that was directly identifying this technique as being leveraged by operators. After that, we have the type of hunt, which is an endpoint-based search, which is what type of data we're going to actually look at and how we're going to look at it. In this instance, we're going to look at the data coming from our endpoints. And finally, you as defenders, how do you control or protect yourselves against this attack? Please apply the patch. The patch came out in June. I absolutely recommend you do so. If you are unable to apply patches, which is the case at times, there is a mitigation which you should consider not joining that vCenter or ESXi host to the domain. In the show notes, there will be an article from Sophos identifying and discussing a variety of these control and mitigation mechanisms. Now, finally, what did this hunt identify to date? Currently, we have identified 3 incident response events with 3 different environments impacted, with 1 new detection opportunity generated. So moving on to why this hunt is impactful. And so what I wanted to say with this particularly, right, is that the open source reporting indicates 4 different ransomware affiliates have leveraged this vulnerability over a month after public disclosure. So you'd think that after that time, we'd maybe be able to patch. Unfortunately, we are not. Now, while Sophos MDR identified a unique ransomware actor exploiting the CVE in late July, that red bubble, that 726 item, attributing a black suit ransomware operator prior to Microsoft's report. After that, Microsoft generated a report on the 29th, identifying and detailing that both Black Basta and Akira affiliates were leveraging this attack. Finally, we were able to identify within MDR that 2 more incidents with Akira occurred. And then what actually occurred today at 10 a.m. UTC was that Cisco Talos identified Blackbyte ransomware affiliates as exploiting this vulnerability. So that's 4 different affiliates leveraging and attacking this vulnerability. If you have not patched, I'd recommend maybe signing off right now and going and patching. If not, please read mitigations and look to protect yourself. Now, how do we actually go about creating the threat hunt to actually catch this activity? Now, this is a death or detection, engineering, and threat hunting opportunities for this attack. It's a 2-part attack where the threat actor will either create that group, or then they'll add their they'll either compromised or created and compromised accounts to that group. And we want to approach it from 2 different perspectives, given the severity associated with this attack. We're seeing those threat actors go after ESXi hosts, gaining access to the actual underlying bare metal hypervisor. The reason why this is so impactful is it allows multiple virtual machines to be encrypted with 1 or a few clicks of a button. So allowing their impact to be really great for a very small amount of action. Because of this impact level, we're going to hunt and try and identify this from 2 different perspectives. There's the managed asset component, right, where we have a 4727 event ID, where a security enabled group is created within the domain, or a 4728 event ID where a user is added to that domain. And apologies, I didn't explain what this attack is. Very specifically, if the ESXadmin group is seen by an ESXi hypervisor, it will immediately apply administrative privilege to any, or grant administrative privilege to any user inside of that group. It's not controlled by anything underlying or below that. It's just a single string-based match. So that's why we're going to look for that group creation or that group modification. The unfortunate reality is that not all of our hosts are oftentimes enrolled. It's a very big problem that all of you understand, that assets are all over the place. And sometimes we miss those assets when we're trying to deploy our sensors. So we're going to hunt for this occurring from endpoints as well, or unmanaged, for this occurring against unmanaged assets. So we do this by looking for scripting interpreters, which is PowerShell and command, executing commands to either create that group or add users to it. So here I have that manage assets query that we're going to be giving away to the community channel. And this is actually the query that we wrote and we're giving away is actually it's like 60 lines. It doesn't fit here. but this is just looking at that group creation. The one that we're passing out is both the group creation and modification in one query. And you can see in those last lines, 22 and 23, where we're looking at that specific set of data. And then finally, we're looking for that ESX admin group creation. And I spoke about unmanaged assets. The command executable, that scripting interpreter, is going to use use net to then add a user to that group, which is the ESX admin group. We also have PowerShell. The reason why now this is particularly of interest, now I want to call out that lines 35, 36 through 38, we're actually using aliasing. So PowerShell has this ability for, I don't know if you're an administrator, but if you are and you administrate like I used to, I'm going to try and type as little as possible. And so there's actually PowerShell aliases where you can type not the entire commandlet into the command line. So we're actually looking for the smallest subset that will allow that to be detected. And then we're looking for PowerShell or the other instances of PowerShell in lines 30 through 32, or 30 and 32 rather, for adding to that ESX admin group. Now, I talked to you about both ransomware operators and nation state operators. So here we have Stack 1870, which we attribute to be a Chinese nation state actor. In this instance, or this threat hunt, our hypothesis is that we will use infrastructure tracking, or the identification and watching of what we believe command and control infrastructure looks like through open source intelligence. And then we will then look for that communication occurring within our client base. I've been collaborating with my colleague Jordan Olness on this. He's been fantastic to work with. And so that's why the source of this is personal research, as well as the MDR operations team. And then finally, the type of search is, again, infrastructure tracking, but we're going to just look for programmatically network communications to those specific and identified command and control items. The outcomes of this is we actually were able to identify 2 different incident response events, 2 impacted customers with 7 machines impacted, and 1 new lab detection. Now, and then 1 new detection rule as well. Now, how did they actually create these communications? It's through a DLL sideloading. And DLL sideloading of a Bitdefender executable called redpatch.exe. The attack chain for this is the threat actor deployed a web shell, then used a rogue RMM called Itarian, which is now branded as Komodo. It used to be labeled as Komodo. It is now Itarian. They then used a scheduled task to move laterally, which then executed the renamed instance of redpatch.exe inside of the threat actor own directory. The way that DLL sideloading works is it's going to use a specific order of operations to try and look for any DLL components to load into the process. The first place it will look is the directory that it's executing from. So the threat actor knows this and is going to actually drop their malicious version of version.dll into that directory, causing redpatch to actually execute their payload and still look like redpatch.exe to us as defenders. After this loading of that DLL occurs, command and control activity then occurred. And so that's why that's what we ended up hunting for. And then what is C Corridor? We actually identified and found this. I think we got beaten by a week for this unnamed malware at the time. But we tracked this specific stack or security threat activity cluster 1870 as leveraging it. It's typically been deployed via DLL sideloading, and it leverages a variety of different executables, not just Bitdefender's redpatch.exe, but a whole host of what we've identified over the past year and a half. How do we find this? So I talked to you about DLL sideloading, which is an image load, right? Where that executable is going to say, I need this DLL, I'm going to load it into my process. But you might look at this and say, well, Mark, that says that's running process executions. A fun fact, if you're threat hunting, is that you can actually identify, in my opinion, a lot of the time, DLL sideloading through parent-child process relationships. Now, in this instance, we're going to specifically look for, as you can see on line 28, the original file name or the file's metadata, where it's saying it's redpatch.exe. Now, something that's intriguing is that, again, we're threat hunting here, so we're trying to observe and identify the human operators, right, actually running their executables. They're actually going to deviate from expected activity, and they're actually doing, and so we're going to use something called baselining, where we're going to say what normally executes redpatch.exe. Well, normally is executed from bredline.exe, and so we're not going to look at that. And what we were left with when we excluded that bredline.exe was only malicious threat activity. And so again, this hunt query will be available to you. I wish you all happy hunting and know that we are defending our customers actively with this. With that being said, I believe we're on to the next section, which I'll hand off to Greg right now.
Thanks, Mark. Right, let me progress onwards. So, hey, everyone. We've done this in the past, and I've had even people poke and say we haven't always brought this in every single month based on time. But yeah, we've got this thing we call Sophos MDR Most Unwanted. It is a shareable image that we upload to the Sophos MDR community page, and we usually do it within about 24 hours after this broadcast. So this month, I've kind of taken a couple of little topics that we can look at. And the idea of this is that it's not really just for you as like an IT or security professional. It's for you to share with your sort of layman members of staff that perhaps aren't so skilled in terms of security or as aware of IT concepts and so on. And it's kind of just like a nice thing you can share out and hopefully improve the security posture of your individuals. So the two things I wanted to cover this month were fake and phishing websites. I won't read this completely because I want to save time for Andrew to be able to talk because I'm intrigued very much so on his section. So the core advice here really is to tell users about, hey, there's these dodgy websites out there that are spoofing, legitimate websites. Pay attention to the URL bar, and because that's often it'll be not the official website. Don't assume the link you click in the search engine is going to take you to a safe website, and don't click on links from people you don't know. And then I also did another little thing which I wanted to bring in a couple of months ago, but didn't have time, so I thought I'd stick it in this month, which is about fake browser extensions. There's browser extensions kind of extend the functionality of your web browser. There's a lot of these that are pretty suspicious, and plenty that have turned out to be thoroughly malicious. So this is kind of just inviting people to be a bit more skeptical when it comes to installing browser extensions. The less you install, the better. If you are going to install them, ensure it's from the official store and it's not from some kind of third-party website. And read the reviews for any kind of extension as well. You often find if there are any problems, people go in there complaining, saying, "Oh, this is dodgy or malware in it," before it's actually kicked off the stores. And to look and see how many other users are using the extension, whether there's other extensions with a similar name. Maybe they're doing typo squatting. But yeah, that's enough of that. So I'm going to now pass over to Andrew. Andrew, if you want to come on stage, then you can take us through all the wonderful things going on in the XOps world.
Cool. Thank you so much, Greg. Yeah, let's talk about what XOps has been doing. We've been pretty busy. It was Black Hat and DEF CON month, and despite that, we managed to bang out 6 stories so far in August. One of the more interesting ones is the first one that's shown here, which was done by my colleague, Matt Wixie. Matt has some very intriguing insider information. He is a little bit of a he does a little bit of spying on some of the bad guys in their native habitats. And he did this great story about how ransomware gangs have ramped up the ways that they do pressure campaigns on ransomware victims to pay the ransom. So some of the extortion attempts that he describes in this story is how in the case of Alfie, that they had conducted a ransomware attack against a company, and then they reported that company to the Securities and Exchange Commission for not disclosing the breach that they themselves had done, as a way to pressure them into paying the ransom by leveraging the threat of fines on the company that was attacked. They are doing things like threatening to release information to the media, threatening to take the information that they know about customers and send messages directly to customers. Hey, did you know that your business that you're doing business with has been hit with ransomware? You should really tell them that, we know who you are, so therefore they should pay the ransom to protect your information. It's a lot of shenanigans there. In addition to that, we have a really great story about how to do how to work on ESXi. This is the VMware hypervisor platform that's used in a lot of enterprise environments. And this is a great story about what you need to do if you run ESXi servers to harden them, lock them down, install patches, turn off the ability to automatically have them connect to your Active Directory. You definitely do not want that to happen, as we discovered just a couple of weeks ago. Even creating an Active Directory account for the ESXi server will automatically add it as a administrator to your Active Directory, and then a threat actor who gets on there can then do bad stuff on your rest of your network. We also did a couple of stories about EDR killers. I'm going to skip over Patch Tuesday and just talk about these other things that we've got in here. And we did a story about a ransomware that during the course of the attack, the ransomware threat actors pushed down a PowerShell script that extracted saved credentials out of Chrome browsers on the network that they were infecting, and then exfiltrated those credentials to themselves. So once again, another sort of point being that, Chrome, which has about 66% of the browser market, it is good that there is a little bit of variability in the browser market. Those 34% did not have their passwords stolen. So sometimes it's good that there is not a monoculture in software. And then I was going to say, we've done a couple of stories on EDR killing software. So these are tools that ransomware threat actors use when they're laying the groundwork, they're inside your network, and they're in the middle of doing the attack. They want to unhook Sophos Endpoint or some other EDR tool that will that might alert or stop their attack from taking place. And so we've done two of these stories. One is about one called EDR Kill Shifter, and the other one is this. So here's EDR Kill Shifter. EDR Kill Shifter is basically it's a tool that takes a legitimate signed driver that belonged to some software company that used it in the past, and it's now deprecated, or the company's out of business, or the product is no longer used, and the driver itself is vulnerable to being exploited in a way that gives it kernel privileges to do things it should not have originally was not designed to do. EDR Kill Shifter embeds multiple of these drivers within itself, so it is a very complicated install process, but the malware attackers will run this program, and they can tell EDR Kill Shifter which driver they want to use to try to unhook the EDR or endpoint protection software on the product. Cool things about this is that it has some really interesting characteristics, like it self-modifies its code. So as it's running, it is changing the next subroutine to actually make it the active subroutine to do the bad thing. So when we are looking at it statically, it looks like a bunch of junk, and then once it runs, it is sort of unfolding as it runs the operations that it needs to be able to install these drivers, and it embeds multiple of these drivers, and we're detecting it with this Troj killav-kg detection in our endpoint. And then the other one that we wanted to mention is this one called Burnt Cigar. Now, regular listeners to the podcast, the webcast, will remember that the Burnt Cigar EDR killer was the one that was the threat actors had been using drivers again to unhook EDR products, and that they were getting them signed with Microsoft's Windows Hardware Quality Labs key, which is essentially the holy grail of permission levels for a bad EDR driver. We worked with Microsoft pretty closely for about a year to help them close all the loopholes that these guys were using to get them signed in Microsoft's own code signing mechanism. They have now switched gears. They're getting their code signed by taking stolen or leaked or otherwise obtained legitimate certificates that belong to other companies, and they're signing them with those. As you know, kernel drivers need to be signed, or else Windows won't load them by default. It throws all sorts of errors. But they did not slack off on the development of this tool. It is no longer just an EDR killer. It is virtually a rootkit. Among the features that we discovered in this latest version of Burnt Cigar is that it is intercepting more than 20 Windows API calls, which are very low-level instructions that go between the operating system and applications that run on the operating system. And it will either send those API calls into kind of a black hole where no response is ever received by either the program or the operating system, or it will actually inject wrong information in there as a way to conceal itself, as a way to prevent EDR software from removing it. It also does the kernel level thing where it's trying to kill the software that would protect the machine. But in addition to killing that software, it is also capable of not just deleting it, but deleting it securely, overwriting the file system where the EDR software had been. Fortunately, we have some behavioral detections that catch when it is doing this, so it is ineffective with us. But as you can see in the slides here, they tried over and over again on some occasions to use different certificates, different versions of the product to unhook us, and eventually, just gave up, and we were able to isolate the machine where they were trying to run this thing and unhook our system from protection, and they were unsuccessful. So it was a happy story, and in both cases of these EDR killers, the advice that's on screen here is valid. You should always ensure that tamper protection is enabled. It is literally the tamper protection that they are trying to unhook that they are usually unsuccessful at, and to manage admin privileges very carefully, and not allow people to have not allow most people to have admin privileges, because that privilege escalation allows people to take advantage of the user accounts that have those privileges and just unhook the software in a different way. And of course, keep up with your patches. So that's it from XOps, and I guess we'll pass it back to Greg.
Thanks, Spike. And yeah, that was a good point actually on that last one. I remember a long time ago when I was reading the Microsoft admin guides. This is a long time ago. There was a good bit of stipulation saying that even an admin should always be logged in as an underprivileged user, but then have an admin account which they then elevates. Let's say they want to install something, you do run as, and then run that as, and then log in using the credentials then as the administrator, rather than being interactively logged into the system as an account with administrator access. So basically, everyone should be an underprivileged user, and your admin should have then a separate admin account, which they then elevate their privileges with for specific activities, so that if an attacker or any kind of adversary can sort of get a foothold on a machine, they shouldn't be able to then take the credentials from that logged in user or run something as an admin, because the logged in user is already running in the context of admin. At least that's my memory. It's a long time ago. I'm sure someone in Q&A is going to tell me off and tell me that it's all changed and I've got ancient knowledge, which is probably not wrong. Okay, so we've been inundated with Q&A questions. I do believe you've probably not been seeing them in the Q&A panel. I think we've got them turned off because we need to look into some features to make sure everyone's names are anonymized in future ones of these. So we don't want people's names showing up. I'm sure you don't want your name visible to the whole world to see. So we're going to look to get that anonymized in future ones, and hopefully we can then let people see some of the Q&A things. So I'm going to go and dig through a whole bunch of these. And I'm just going to say to any of the other speakers today, feel free to come on stage if you want to add something to any of these questions I've been bringing up. So the first one I thought was a good one is I'm going to paraphrase some of these questions as well, because some of them have a little bit of back and forth for people. So one of them was saying, is it safe to enter personal information into the Have I Been Pwned website, haveibeenpwned.com? And I think it's a good one to share with everyone. So this is a website from Troy Hunt, as long as you're on the official one, haveibeenpwned.com. Troy Hunt's a very, very well-regarded security sort of researcher, and I think even been awarded a Microsoft MVP in the past. And so, yeah, Troy has been running this website for a very long time. You can find actually in the FAQ of that website and the privacy policy some good breakdowns on what they do with that data. But in general, the database is basically just email addresses associated to breaches. There's not your credentials in there. They're not storing any of that kind of stuff there. It's just the emails and then what breaches they're associated with. So when you type in your email address, it just looks up on that database what breaches is this associated with, and so your credentials aren't exposed. Of course, you're still entering in your website your email address into a thing. You need to sort of consider, do you want to be informing that? But I don't believe Troy does any kind of storage of that. So you can, but again, best thing to do, go check the FAQ on that website and go check the privacy policy. It's all detailed on that website. And then there was quite a good few questions talking about how Akira are using lots of these legitimate tools like IP scanner, and there's a whole list of them actually. I forgot where I've put the list now. And yeah, so I think maybe Morgan, you want to come back. Let's sort of elaborate on it, because we had some questions about that table you had on one of your slides. And why don't I throw that slide back on the screen if I can find the button. Here it is. It was a good slide. So this table in the bottom left notes a bunch of these different tools out there, and of course you can use the application control policy looking into those categories. to sort of control those. But Morgan, question I guess is, what are actors actually doing with these payloads? Is it always a malicious? Is it advanced IP scanner plus malware? Is it just purely malware? What kind of things could people expect when they try and download one of these kind of compromised versions of these tools?
Yeah, great question. And anybody, on my team who might have input, feel free to come in. But what at least my understanding is, I do not believe that these are malicious versions of these tools. They are just the tools themselves that they are using for malicious purposes. And that's why these dual use tools are so attractive, is because, you could have just your everyday admin using advanced IP scanner for whatever purpose. But you could also have an attacker in there using advanced IP scanner for, mapping out your network and various things like that, along with AnyDesk and all of these RMM tools. Network scanners kind of the same way, as just using it for internal discovery. And then you have things like FileZilla and WinSCP that are kind of used for collection and exfiltration. These are not embedded with malware. They are just the actual legitimate tools that are being used for various purposes, which is why you want to go in and get application control, because I would think that maybe some of these would be used for legitimate business purposes like AnyDesk. However, I think the vast majority of them would not be used for legitimate business purposes, which is why you want to go ahead and get into app control and block these, just because, if you see them in your environment, it could be a flag of malicious activity happening. So hope I answered that question kind of in a roundabout way, but.
Yeah, that was great. Thanks, Morgan. Let me throw back the Q&A thing on here on screen. I'll make also another little note to everyone at the bottom. You can find the link to the MDR community channel where you can go and find the kind of the show notes, and we've got a whole bunch of other things, including the threat brief, our threat insights, and so on. But yeah, let's go back into some other questions while we still got about 8 minutes left. So someone was talking about should we avoid saving credentials into web browsers in general? I'm going to share a personal opinion. Of course, I'll invite any of my fellow speakers to jump in. But my personal opinion is in saving your passwords into like the built-in password managers inside web browsers is probably a risky behavior. A lot of threat actors are targeting these built-in password managers with info stealers and stealing credentials. I guess where my personal opinion on this is coming from, and here comes Spike to also add in as well. My personal opinion is I had a friend who actually had an info stealer onto one of his machines. He had a brand new laptop, hadn't installed any kind of security tools yet, even though I literally offered him, install Sophos. Let me know your email address, I'll send it to you. And the info stealer did both steal the passwords from his browser, but also logged in session tokens that were stored in the browser. So yeah, in general, the moment, and I'm sure Spike can add in his color in a second, is to not save passwords in the browser, and also to log out of websites when you're done, and rather than staying logged in. But yeah, Spike, please add some color.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to concur with all of what you said. And you actually brought up all the points that I wanted to make, that like saving the password in the browser can be extremely convenient, but is increasingly important, especially in an enterprise or in a business environment, not to save passwords in the browser, just because it is so easy for threat actors, and they so routinely take those passwords and abuse them for very malicious purposes in some cases. So do not save the passwords in the browser. You can usually go into the password manager that's within the browser and just delete everything that's in there. And I would urge you to do that. Use a password manager instead. And like Greg said, sometimes it's not just the passwords. They will also extract and reuse session cookies that are sort of a substitute for credentials that allow people, say if you use Facebook, if you have someone's Facebook cookie, you could basically just browse to Facebook with the cookie embedded and be logged in as that user. So periodically clear your cookies, log out of stuff, and use password manager.
And keep them updated. We have seen folks where threat actors will actually go in and find different or specific offline key password storage mechanisms, and they'll capture the database, and then if it's from a not current version as well. So just wanted to add that in for the hygiene.
And I know it's probably like de rigueur by now, but we should also recommend that everyone use multi-factor authentication at every opportunity. So if you have any account that allows you to use MFA, especially TOTP MFA, that's the MFA app that you can download, whether it's Google Authenticator or one of the other authenticator apps. You should be using those rather than SMS authentication, because of course we've seen a lot of cryptocurrency fans having their SIM cards swapped, and then they lose their entire fortune of whatever cryptocurrency they have. So use those MFA apps rather than your phone, but definitely use MFA.
Yeah, we've been getting quite a few questions actually in this regard, and so people sort of saying like 2FA on accounts, and I think it's good to probably underline that there's two vectors here. One is passwords being stolen from the browser, so that is your username and password that's stored in a credential manager in the browser, and then the actor going to the website, typing in that username and password, and then pops up an MFA or thing saying please enter the MFA. So that's kind of the typical power of MFA if they've stolen your credentials. But there is this other vector we just mentioned, which is I think I probably said it too quickly, but I talked about sort of session tokens being stolen. And these session tokens are, when you log into a website, you've probably seen it on things. Probably I believe it's on like Outlook and probably on Google and things like that say on Facebook and things. It says remember me, right? So when you're checking that and you click sort of log in and you close the browser and the next time you open it and open up that associated website, you're sort of already logged in. So what happened behind the scenes is a session token is stored within the browser, and it's effectively going to have some kind of lifetime to it. It'll probably expire after X amount of time, but it pretty much means that you pass the authentication, that website then sends you back a token saying, cool, from now on, rather than needing to send me the username and password, send me this token, and then this token I'll use to then authenticate you, and then you won't have to keep typing in your username and password. Well, threat actors are also targeting those tokens. So if they can get an info stealer on your machine, that info stealer can then steal the tokens. And this literally happened to a friend of mine. The token was then used to log into his Outlook account. Well, not really log in, just literally they passed the token to the browser, to their browser, and they were able to just immediately hop into that account, bypassing MFA, bypassing everything. And they then went ahead and actually changed his security details, changed his passwords, and basically took his entire Outlook account. And he's lost all of his data and everything. And it's quite problematic. So yeah, it's important in my opinion as well. And I think Andrew and so on has also agreed with this. Go and log out of websites. Don't stay logged in. Storing these session tokens long term just exposes you to risk. Of course, if you've got good endpoint products, hopefully the risk is mitigated, but there's still always that risk. Right, let's try and see what other kind of yeah, Spike.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to also interject because I saw a question asking about a password manager that is a browser extension. So this person was referring to a specific company's product where the password manager is a browser extension. So that is not the same as saving it in the browser's own password store. Those password managers that use an extension to manage the passwords are much safer than just saving it in the browser itself. Just want to make that clear.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Spike. All right, let's kind of dig in through. There's still a ton of questions. We've got about 2 minutes left, so I'm going to pluck out probably one more. And it's one that I didn't get around to. It was posted about a quarter of an hour ago, and I want to kind of tackle it, just saying how are you using AI for threat protection? And Spike, you probably got some good input on this as well. But AI, probably, especially now, LLMs and everything are all the buzz at the moment. AI is a very general term for basically machine learning or some kind of model approach to do something. And so when we talk about AI, we're using it probably in the more the general sense, so that because we use multiple different approaches to how we use AI, right? So for instance, behind the scenes we use things like LLMs to help us do like first passes over PowerShell scripts and things like that to help us sort of deobfuscate and understand what they're doing. But we've also got like ML models that run on, I say ML, machine, that means machine learning. I'm using it interchangeably with AI. AI is kind of the more general person-friendly term than something like ML. But yeah, we use like a model on the endpoint that can do things like analyze a binary and look at various different aspects of that binary and compare it well to its kind of knowledge on a huge corpus of example files that it's seen before. And so AI is kind of used across the board in all sorts of different ways. I wouldn't say we use AI and that means we use an LLM and it's just this one thing. It's a huge field of scientific research. and a huge field in general. And so we're using all sorts of different approaches across the whole spectrum, and that's kind of why we use AI. But we're using it in many different ways. I think we've just hit time now, so I'm just going to say thank you so much for joining us on our sort of first foray into this new platform. Before I leave you, I just want to quickly point out that we've got the threat brief that we post weekly on the MDR community channel. Make sure you hop over to the community channel, go to announcements. There's a little button to turn on notifications so you can get subscribed to those. This is all the links that we had today. Don't worry about it. I don't expect you to make a panic screenshot right now. You can check this in the recording, or you can go onto the community channel in the next 24 hours or so, and we will share these kind of show notes. And I guess I just want to give you sort of a final word, as always. I mean, I thank you so much for taking the time to care about cybersecurity, to care about what's going on in the industry. Knowledge and sharing this kind of knowledge and understanding what actors are up to is a very powerful shield against adversaries out there. So please just stay vigilant, remain incredibly suspicious. And if you observe anything suspicious or questionable, any kind of behavior in your environment that you're not kind of confident about, do not hesitate to contact Sophos MDR Operations. Thank you for joining, and hopefully we'll see you next month. All right, you take care.